The wind did not howl so much as it screamed, a sharp, endless sound that seemed to tear through bone and thought alike, and as I stood there on the snowy mountain road watching our company SUV disappear beneath a curtain of white, I realized fear had a taste, cold and metallic, like biting your tongue in the dark. 1 minute we had been driving through the Rockies on a routine winter site visit in Colorado, the next the storm had swallowed the road, the engine had died, and the world had narrowed to blowing snow and the strictest boss I had ever known standing beside me with ice forming on her eyelashes. This was the moment everything I thought I knew about control, authority, and distance began to unravel. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that happen when people are forced to truly see each other, take a second right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so stories like this can keep reaching hearts. My name is Nathan Cole, and up until that day I believed survival was about planning, spreadsheets, and following rules. I was a junior project analyst from Denver, eager, careful, and painfully aware of hierarchy. My boss, Margaret Reeves, was a legend at our firm, known across offices for her iron discipline, sharp intelligence, and an emotional distance that made meetings feel like courtroom trials. She was in her early 40s, always impeccably dressed, her dark hair pulled back tight as if even a loose strand would be a sign of weakness. I had never seen her smile except in polite corporate ways, and I had never imagined seeing her outside a boardroom, let alone stranded with her on a mountain. The storm had come faster than forecasts promised, a reminder that nature does not negotiate. Cell service vanished first, then visibility, then hope that help would arrive before nightfall. The temperature dropped with terrifying speed, and when Margaret made the call to abandon the vehicle and reach a nearby ranger shelter she remembered from a past inspection, I followed without question. The hike was short but brutal, each step sinking into snow that reached our knees, the wind pressing against us like a living thing trying to force us back. When we finally reached the cabin, it looked like a forgotten dot in a white universe, its windows iced over, its doors stiff but mercifully unlocked. Inside, the shelter was little more than a single room, a wooden table, an old stove, and one narrow bed pushed against the wall. The air smelled of dust and pine, and our breath formed clouds as we stood there listening to the storm rage outside. Margaret assessed the space with the same efficiency she used in meetings, inventorying supplies, checking the stove, calculating risks. She explained, calmly but firmly, that we needed to conserve energy, use the blankets wisely, and stay warm through the night. She acknowledged the obvious reality of the single bed not with embarrassment but with practicality, framing it as a matter of survival rather than comfort. There was no softness in her tone, but there was something else beneath it, a crack I had never heard before, a tremor that told me she was just as human and afraid as I was. The hours that followed were long and heavy, filled with the creak of wood and the relentless drumming of snow against the walls. We took turns feeding the stove with the little firewood we found, huddling close to its weak heat. My hands shook, partly from cold, partly from the surreal nature of being alone with the woman who had signed my performance reviews with ruthless honesty. As night deepened, exhaustion settled in, and the cold crept back northwest no matter how close we sat to the stove. Eventually, practicality won over pride, and we moved to the bed, layers of clothing between us, the blankets pulled tight, our bodies sharing warmth because there was no other choice. Lying there, staring at the dark ceiling, I became acutely aware of every sound, every shift of movement. Margaret's breathing was shallow at first, controlled, as if even sleep had to be managed. I wondered what it cost her to live that way, to always be strong, always be in charge. The storm outside mirrored something breaking open inside the cabin, a slow erosion of the walls we had both built. In the silence, she began to talk, not in commands or critiques, but in reflections. She spoke of growing up in a small town in Montana, of being taught that vulnerability was dangerous, that mistakes were permanent. She shared how she had clawed her way up in a world that rewarded toughness and punished softness, and how somewhere along the line, she had forgotten how to rest. I listened, stunned, realizing how little we truly know the people we judge by titles and reputations. I found myself responding, sharing my own quiet fears of not being enough, of trying so hard to prove my worth that I forgot why I wanted the job in the first place. The bed, the storm, the darkness created a strange sanctuary where honesty felt safer than silence. The strict boss and the nervous employee dissolved into two tired humans clinging to warmth and truth. Sometime in the night, the fire burned low, and the cold pressed closer. We shifted instinctively, not out of intimacy but necessity, and in that closeness, something unexpected happened. The fear eased. My heartbeat slowed. Margaret's breathing deepened, steady and human, and I felt a profound sense of trust settle between us. It was not romantic in the way movies sell romance, but it was deeply intimate in its own way, a shared vulnerability forged by circumstance and choice. Morning arrived quietly, the storm having spent itself in the night. Pale sunlight filtered through frosted windows, illuminating a world transformed into blinding white. We woke stiff and sore but alive, the simple miracle of survival washing over us in waves. Margaret looked different in the daylight, not weaker, but lighter, as if the mountain had stripped away something heavy she had been carrying for years. She thanked me, not as a boss to an employee, but as one person to another, and in that moment, I understood that leadership did not have to be cold to be strong. Rescue came hours later, a ranger team following our abandoned vehicle's tracks. As we descended the mountain, the distance between us felt altered, not erased but redefined. Back in the world of offices and emails, something subtle had shifted. Margaret still held high standards, still demanded excellence, but there was now room for understanding, for growth without fear. She mentored rather than intimidated, challenged rather than crushed. I found my voice, my confidence no longer rooted in approval but in self-respect. Before this story ends, I want to ask you something from the heart. If you have ever judged someone too quickly, or been judged yourself, comment below and share one word that represents second chances to you. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Months later, as I reflect on that night on the snowy mountain, I realize it changed more than my career. It changed how I see people, how I measure strength, how I understand kindness. Sometimes, life forces us into tight spaces with people we think we know, strips away comfort and control, and shows us that warmth is not just physical, but emotional, built from empathy and shared humanity. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even the coldest nights can lead to warmer mornings, please like, share, and subscribe, and let us know in the comments. Your engagement keeps these stories alive, and together, we can keep spreading hope, one true story at a time.